When I think about the times where I was deepest in my addiction with alcohol, it feels in hindsight, being able to look back with clarity, that there's literally a veil over like your eyes. I mean, it's figuratively speaking, but where like you're not able to see the potential of what it feels like to do life present.
Yo, I'm Bryce the Third.
And I'm Liz McKean.
And you are now tuned in to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. Here we dive into all the recovery stories from around the world.
And we talk about all pathways because there's no one right way to recover.
If you've been with us for a while, you know how powerful stories are. So get ready for your community to get just a little bigger today.
We are so glad that you're here. Let's get into the show.
Liz, how's your energy?
Bryce, my energy is not nearly as serene as I just sounded in that. Bryce. My energy is great. Man, especially for a Monday. I started the day out with a workout, which I try to do most days. And the days that I do, I feel so much better. And I did it today. So good start to the day.
Nice.
Good middle to the day. How's your energy?
Nice. Pretty cool. Can't complain. Same deal here. It is Hell Week at the gym that I shall not name because they don't sponsor me. But today is the third day of the fourth day before I get my T-shirt, so I'm like ready for this T-shirt tomorrow. But yeah, it's been a chill day. One of those days where like logistics are clicking and the things I got to do are rolling. So you got to appreciate those days. And I also have the luxury to be here on this podcast with you, my good friend, to meet a new friend. And so I'm excited to get into this conversation. Liz, who do we have here today?
Well, today we're so excited to talk to the wonderful Jessie Karajet, who is the host of the Sober Strength podcast and founder of Altum Fitness. I pronounced the things right.
Well done.
If I was really cool, I wouldn't have even said anything about it, but we all know I'm not. So Jessie, welcome. Thanks for being here. How are you today?
I'm really good. Well done.
Thanks.
Pronounced both right. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And can I answer the energy question? I wasn't expecting that.
Sure can.
Please do.
How's my energy? Grateful. I feel grateful today. And you can ask me why if you want, or just leave it at that. But I'm just feeling gratitude and I'm feeling optimism today.
Beautiful. We'll just leave it at that.
Let's
no,
do
I'm
it.
playing. Why?
Man. I was going to say, I couldn't just leave it at that. Tell me.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's been a journey for me. These last, if I had to put my finger on it, these last 14 months or so. And in any journey, sometimes you don't really know like the outcome, and you just have to have faith, and it can be hard, and days can be rewarding and challenging. And I'm just kind of seeing some real light going forward. And I feel like there's a reason that I'm on the journey I'm on, and I'm just having one of those days or even weeks where I'm just kind of like, man, life is pretty cool sometimes. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, you gotta love those moments where that feeling of belonging in the space that I'm in clicks into place. Like versus, the scribbles that can tend to be the requirement for some of those moments of appreciation and alignment. It's just cool when it's like, yo, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I know it's been tough, and it's been like I've been wearing my pants backwards and my hat to the side, and it's just been weird. But in this moment, like, I feel grateful.
That's good, man. That's good. I've learned in my short-ish life, I'm 39, be 40 next month, but I've learned that sometimes like the more I want to control life, or should I say like the harder I grip to life and try to control an outcome, the harder life feels, and I don't kind of get what I'm hoping for. And then when I kind of let go, but just work just as hard, but kind of trust that the future is good and the outcome is good, that's when all the blessings kind of pour in. So I'm at this place where I'm kind of very open-handed with life, yet still I seem to be getting blessed every day. So it's pretty cool how life works like that.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Life is like a wet noodle. You try to grab it and then I'm just looking at Liz's face and I'm just trying to say the most ridiculous thing. But like in all seriousness, Jessie, like I could definitely relate. Oftentimes when I have it must be, the outcome must be exactly this, and my laser focus is on this outcome that it must be. That's when I tend to like suffer the most. But when I prioritize showing up, and when I prioritize service for real, like finding a community, finding people to serve, to get outside of myself and contribute to, like that's when those moments really, really begin to come.
Well said. Almost as well said as life is like a wet noodle. I kind of like that. But
I thought you were gonna go for like, you know, when you're holding sand and there's like so many metaphors for exactly what you said, and I'm like,
wet noodle.
Wet noodle is not one
just
that I
wet
heard.
noodle.
That and the
Simple
pants on
is better.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what is happening?
You try to grab it, it slips out your hand.
Just slips away.
Losing track of our metaphors in this conversation. Well, Jesse, it's always such a treat to have somebody on. I mean, it's a treat to have anybody on, like truly every single time we get to have a conversation with somebody on this podcast. It feels like, you know, one of those moments where like, oh my God, how do I get to do this? And it's, you know, part of my job. Like, come on, this is the most fun ever. But when someone comes on who has a podcast and, you know, is just like adept at speaking on the mic, it's awesome. And also cool because you get to be on the other side of it now, because you usually ask all the questions, right? And
this is easy over here.
Yeah,
I like this. I'm just relaxed.
I know. Well, and I can't wait to hear I definitely want to hear about your podcast and have folks know about the cool things you're working on, but let's get to know you first. And I know that you had told us previously that you do identify as someone in recovery, but you also have talked about redefining sober. So if you are up for telling a little of your story and how those weave into it, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. I guess I'll just start with the story, or the why I'm where I am. And where am I is I quit objectively speaking, a pretty lucrative career path last year. My last day in like a corporate job as a W-2 was in August of 2023. At the time, people were telling me literally that I was crazy for stepping away from what I was doing. I was an executive for a pretty major medical group. By major, I just mean very large, traveling a lot, young family, whatnot. But my mental health was suffering for the second time in my life. And I was turning to alcohol to really privately cope with trying to be a perfect employee, but also trying to be a perfect dad and husband. And I think when you try to be perfect at everything, sometimes you can't be good at pretty much anything. And I've always been a pretty self-aware, intuitive guy. And I just knew where I was dropping the ball, especially in my personal life. And it was just a very uncomfortable place to be. So I was drinking a lot. I lost my biological father when I was 19 to AIDS. And I lost my stepfather, who I loved dearly, when I was 36. That was only 3 years ago today, to alcoholism. So I lost two very important men in my life to substance use, or misuse, should I say. And I've kind of, I can't go down that road, and when I was turning to alcohol in an unhealthy way, I just kind of had to pull up, and I knew that in order for me to make a change, I had to do something kind of dramatic, meaning like, I can, high performer type, right? Like I can work hard and then I can kind of self-medicate and still seemingly like kind of keep it together. And at the time I just knew that I needed to just pull up and take a big break. And for the first time in my life, be honest about some of my mental health issues that were unaddressed. So I went from literally this, again, executive in a healthcare group. Everyone kind of looked at me like I was, I had it all together and I was just high performing, hardworking, hard charging guy. I was in the Marine Corps and I think people had that perception of me and I knew that, but like internally I was just kind of like falling apart and trying to keep it together. So I felt like I had to get well, and I quit my corporate job and I started a podcast 3 months after that. We started it on Veterans Day 2023. So it's 11/11/23, and started it for, very intentional on that day. My father was a Marine and my stepfather was a Marine too. So that's kind of how I got to where I am, or where I've been for the last year. And I'm happy to say with the podcast in particular, it's just been growing like a weed and reaching people and making a difference and impacting people, specifically veterans, but also all sorts of people. So it's been a blessing. It really has. So that's just some of the about me, if you will.
No, that's amazing. What was the drive or the pull to create a podcast?
So I have lots of certifications in fitness. It's always been a big part of my life. And at one point, I'll get to your good question, Bryce, but at one point my dream was to open a brick and mortar gym. I heard you say earlier that you're at a gym, you're working on a t-shirt. I wasn't quite sure what you're talking about there, but it's been like it was a big thing of mine. I wanted to start a gym, but not for like the physical fitness side of it. I did want it to be, sorry to cuss on your show, but like a badass gym. I wanted to have great classes, great weights, great equipment, great trainers, all those things. But what I really wanted to do was integrate mental health and emotional health into it. So I wanted to go out and build relationships with therapists and providers in the community, host like small groups based out of the gym, but really try to get people to look inward, to look deep. And that's the root word of Ultim Fitness, the parent company. And my wife and I, we had our first kid, and we had our second kid, and we just couldn't quite find the right time, because we knew starting a brick and mortar gym is like, that's like a baby in itself, and it's a lot of work. So we just kind of kept putting it off. And then when I decided to, quit my career, I wanted to do that same thing, which is, fitness, help people with emotional fitness, substance use, things like that. But I thought why not start a show and invite people on to talk about those things, while at the same time developing a community in some other areas where once people learn about the show, they can voluntarily step in some of the free resources that we have. So the podcast was originally just kind of like build a platform to make people aware of different offerings. But honestly, now it's kind of like the only thing I care about. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy talking to people. And that's the thing I see myself doing for the long haul.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's so much like it's just another, or the example of not so much a wet noodle, but like the whole like holding things really tight versus the soft grip, where it's like you have this vision and it's like when you set your GPS and you think the direction it's going to take you, but it's like, well, actually there's some twists and turns we're going to take that might bring you somewhere you didn't expect. But if you hadn't had that vision to begin with, you wouldn't have gotten to this place, and allowing it to kind of unfold as it is, with those values being the goal, with that impact kind of being the goal, as opposed to like exactly what it was going to look like from the start. And that I think makes it really special.
Yeah. Well said. Habits die hard. And, I think quitting my job and starting a podcast and a business 3 months later, it wasn't enough time to kind of untangle some of the habits that I had. And the habit really that I'm still breaking free from is this like tendency to look at time as a commodity to be maximized in every single minute. And that's what served me so well in my career. I was ultra productive, go down the list, but like wake up early, I had every single day, like time blocked and everything, looking at metrics. Well, when I started the podcast, it's like I found myself unintentionally becoming like obsessed with metrics, right? Like downloads and growth. And I started developing these tools to try to watch it. And all of a sudden it just turned into another thing that I was becoming too addicted to and trying to like grow. And that's why when we kicked off the show, it's like, I just find myself in this place of gratitude, because when I let go of that and I just started to think, what do I want to talk about? What does my audience want to talk about? Who are some people that are good people that can come on the show and share genuine wisdom for altruistic reasons, and just have them on the show and start talking, and that's it, and just publish it, and then just let it go. That's when the show started to grow. But when I was like hyper focused and like, it just doesn't work. And I think listeners pick up on that if you're kind of trying too hard,
Yeah. Yeah, they, and I think that's the natural process. I mean, not everybody gets super deep into like the time blocking, but like I think everybody has their own specific way as to how they want to control the outcome. And I think especially in this business, learning what good looks like for me, learning how to define success for me. What does success look like for me? And then depending on the season of the thing that I'm doing, that success may look a little different. So to have that conversation with ourselves that allows for us to know, like, well, what does the win look like for me? Is it metrics? Is it a million trillion people listening? Or is it the right people in the space being able to pull out the right jewels that they need for this time of their life to be able to walk in life with their head held a little higher, and with the tools to be able to show up for life on life's terms. And, in the meanwhile, I get to meet different people and build my own community as well, which gives me the perseverance to continue to traverse this path of creation.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. It's kind of the ancient, kind of question of deep or wide. Do you want to go, deep on certain topics and have a maximal impact on fewer people, go as wide as possible and cover a bunch of topics, but not really, kind of zero in on who you're looking to help. So,
Jesse, my ADHD tells me I can do both, and I attempt to every day, and then I get chin checked every day. Like, no, just do this one thing, man.
Yep.
I was just thinking when you were talking about what success looks like. It's just such a term that I feel like we say so often in, I think, multiple businesses, but. When it comes to recovery, sobriety, like whatever you want to call it, like I think for me, this applies to a lot of life. And it started with recovery, which is I had to figure out what I wanted it to feel like without knowing what it was going to look like. And I just wonder if you can relate to this because fitness is such a path for you. Because for me, it started with yoga. And, when people used to talk to me, when I used to talk to my husband about like, needing to stop drinking, like desperately, like literally you're going to die if you don't stop this. And why won't you stop this? And just stop this, And, I was like, I can't do life without it. Like, I understand I can't be alive with this very much longer. And also I can't do life without this. Like, I cannot picture that. But then I'd have these moments, these little stretches of like, baby sobriety, like, and I'd be on a yoga mat and I had these moments where I'd like feel it and I'd be like, oh, this is what it could feel like. And that was when I started like piecing those little moments together is when I was like, I know what I want this to feel like. And that makes me want it. Because when I was just trying to picture what it would look like, what life without this thing that I thought was keeping me alive would look like, it was like, I can't picture it. And therefore I don't want it. And so it's the feeling, I think, for me. And that when I am able to take a step back and not try to do everything at once allows me to take step forwards in other areas too. So wondering if that's kind of in your arena too with fitness and recovery being
it is. But just as you were saying that, I was just thinking oftentimes when I think about the times where I was deepest in my addiction with alcohol, it feels in hindsight, being able to look back with clarity, that there's literally a veil over like your eyes. I mean, it's figuratively speaking, but where like you're not able to see the potential of what it feels like to do life present and just have joy without having to rely on something that you ingest. Right. But like you, Liz, there was times where I would have these kind of like moments of clarity that would remind me of what it felt like when I was, not using so heavily. And that clarity is a deep motivator to almost like encourage you and gives you hope. Be like, oh, wait, life is better on the other side. And, I don't know physiologically what's happening in our brains when we have those moments, but, you might say that that's almost like a spiritual kind of, it's almost like this awakening, like, hey, this is out there, this is for you. And depending on your faith, you might think that's God pulling you back, or you just think like, hey, I maybe I had some dopamine released while I was on the yoga mat, and I can see that there's other ways to find that. But either way, I'm so glad that people can have those moments, because I think it does draw us towards a healthier place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So what do you mean when you say redefining sober?
So I'm literally, if you trace the word sober or sobriety back as far as you can, there's different time periods where you start to see it, primarily in Europe and other places, or even in the Bible. But sobriety was seldom used on its own. It wasn't just sober. Now the word sober oftentimes first and foremost is connected to alcohol abstinence first. It can also be attached to, any type of substance use, substance abuse. Being sober means abstinent, completely abstinent. But the earliest kind of usage of that word was normally attached to sober-mindedness. It was some people interpret it that way, and sober-mindedness is more broad. I'll put it this way: I think if someone's pursuing sobriety, I think they're pursuing something so much more than just not ingesting one particular substance or maybe multiple substances. I think they're after something deeper and broader. So redefining sober to me means, how do you free yourself from the chains of any indulgence that you could be overindulging on? And that could be something like social media or any type of entertainment or comedy. It could be fitness for, maybe guys like me and Bryce. It could be, yes, alcohol, but it could be food. It could be anything. So for me, redefining sober, it might even be better said like going back and properly defining sober. But I think people should not just look at one substance. And for me, it was alcohol. But I found that when I do, it's almost like a boat that has like multiple holes in it that's taking water. And if you run to one, and I found this in my life, and I put all my effort to like plug, say, the hole that is alcohol, I'll spring up more of a leak somewhere else. And for me, that'll be to go over and just distract myself when I'm stressed or when I'm pressured or when I'm dysregulated. And I'll start like swiping on Instagram, right? Or I'll find something else to distract myself from me because I'm uncomfortable and I'm not healthy. And it's just a kind of a call for people to address the underlying issues and also pull up and, try to make sure you're not focusing too much energy just in one place, if it's alcohol or something else. So redefining sober is, I think, sober-mindedness. And a way to redefine that might be just like, we all just want to be present, but capable enough and emotionally and mentally strong enough to just kind of sit with ourselves, even if it's uncomfortable and painful, but just address those underlying issues, of which your substance or indulgence of choice is more of a symptom of a bigger problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I'm curious. I mean, through my recovery journey, like there's certain things, I call it as above, so below, as within, so without. There's certain things where it's like, I got sober in 2013, which led me to, asking questions about everything. But ended up, in the gym and was hitting the bag. Meanwhile, I had been smoking cigarettes since I was 15. So I would be in the gym hitting the bag. Then I'd go out into the parking lot and I'm like, that was a good workout. and after a while, it's just like, this, like the alignment is off. And so it's like, okay, we got to put these things down. And I think like that gradual, also gracious process of allowing for alignment versus like, no, everything at the same time, quit everything. And it needs to, like, that's what has allowed for me to unfold at my own pace, as well as I'm 12 steps. So 12 step came in and it kind of gutted me out spiritually, mentally, in a way that it gave me a process for living that allowed for me to show up for life on life's terms. Because there's also, the saying, the universe abhors a vacuum. So if you take something out, it's trying to like suck something in. And if you don't put nothing in, then before you know it, you scrolling on social media, spending time with people you don't even need to be spending time with, all the icky activities. And so I'm curious as to when you speak of doing that process of inner work, what was your process, or what has been your process? How has that evolved? Like, what do you do to take that look within?
Yeah. So what I've learned is, and I'll start with that, and then how I kind of moved away from that. But the reason I turned to things like alcohol or just distractions in general is because I'm very uncomfortable in a dysregulated state. If I'm overstimulated, if I'm ruminating on things that I'm worried about that happened or will happen, if I'm in a place that there's just too much happening and I don't have time to process things and put them in neat containers, I become dysregulated. And then I turn to something. So if it's alcohol, it's an off switch. I mean, unfortunately, anyone that's had issues with alcohol like me, you know that it can work in the very, very short term. It can change your emotional state. It can change your mental state. That's why we turn to it. Chronically over time, it becomes an insidious habit, right? So what I had to learn, to answer your question, Bryce, is like, why is that? Why am I uncomfortable? Why do I get dysregulated in the first place? And one of the key things, and I'll just focus on one because I can unpack everything I've learned. It would take more time than you have. But for whatever reason, I operate at a baseline of anxiety and fear. Underneath, for me, there's always this, and I have to be present and still to realize that every time I'm feeling uncomfortable, I can trace it back to something I'm worried about. Well, what am I worried about? We talked about control earlier on in this conversation. I desperately want to control every single outcome in my life, and it manifests in this like hyper focus on being efficient and effective. Well, how do I address those fears? Well, the only way to do it, and this is literally all to answer your question, Bryce, it's like I have to sit with myself every single day. I have to create space to sit and reflect. Sometimes it can be journaling. Sometimes it can literally just be going for a walk and putting my phone and leaving it behind so I don't have the temptation to do more productive things. But I have to have time. I have to build in time to sit and come back to the true me and ask myself, what am I worried about? What feels heavy and why? And then when I can logically and rationally trace it back to a fear and then address that fear, I find that to be very therapeutic for me. Now, if I don't have the time to do that, if I don't actually have built-in kind of guardrails for me to sit with myself, then what happens is days stack into weeks where I'm just operating at this chronic level of baseline anxiety, and I get worn out and I need to turn to something to help me cope with that, right? So a practical tool is just even like quiet time. For me, I tried journaling consistently every day. I've read different things you can do to, have morning, nighttime journals, but I don't like to have rigid rules around how I practice solitude and silence, because then it becomes a discipline that I can fail at. And then it becomes a source of being uncomfortable and feeling unhappy again. But as long as I'm building in time for me to process, that's something that's incredibly important for me. So I think fitness has always been there. It's kind of like the last thing to go for me, but like focusing on that meditation type mindfulness, silence, whatever you want to call it, has been just a game changer for me. One of many things that have been that way.
No, that's amazing. I like that last part where like not being too rigid upon how it is that you show up. Cause I've had in a lot of these apps, like Insight, well, I'm not going to say the name, but a lot of these apps will have like the streak on it. And it's like, at one point I had like a 150-day streak, and then I missed a day, and it's like, oh, I'm a failure.
Yeah. You're a failure. Yeah.
I should just not get out this bed for the rest of my life, because I'm the worst person in the world. And it's like, no, like today, that's just not what you did. I'm curious, how much for you has your experience as a veteran impacted how you've needed to cope or show up for life?
Cope or show up. So for me, being aware of here's the biggest, the most valuable thing of being a veteran for me is recognizing that when you are a veteran, particularly a certain branch, that people have an expectation of you. Of it's almost a caricature, and it's not always true. And I think that caricature might sound like this: tough, emotionally and physically, self-sufficient, iron-willed, disciplined, productive. There's this, rightfully so. Many veterans are that. But when you don't feel that internally, which many veterans don't, there becomes like a cognitive dissonance where for me, it started to feel like I can go in two directions there. One, what's wrong with me? Why aren't I feeling that way? I know I should be. And then how do I act that way, even though I don't feel that way, right? Especially when you meet new people within usually a 15, 20-minute conversation, your background comes out and you share that, and you're aware that now they project some qualities onto you. A big motivation of mine in doing what I find myself doing now, and again, having lost 2 fathers to substance abuse, and I'll say, I think more accurately, mental health challenges. I think that unfortunately, you will find so many veterans are suffering from mental health challenges, which if you think about it, it kind of goes against that character. Now some of them are experiencing mental health challenges very specifically related to combat. And that's something that's a whole nother conversation. But I think it's such a shame that so many veterans are suffering from mental health challenges, but they feel like they can't say something because they'll be letting people down based on that caricature of who they are, or they'll feel weak and they'll feel vulnerable, which is not which is not a common kind of feeling for vets. And you can even say for first responders, police officers, firemen, EMTs, nurses, doctors, all those working in a hospital. Just vulnerability and weakness is not something that you feel comfortable sharing because, again, you feel like you're letting people down. Mm-hmm. So I think a big motivator for me is to try to destigmatize what it means for anyone to be able to raise their hand to say that they're struggling, because I think that shows courage and strength. However, for someone like me or veterans, I think that they don't feel courageous or strong by doing that. So one of my goals is to bring people on the show and just create content that says, look, you can be a badass and you can be able to physically take care of yourself and be able to defend yourself and be strong and courageous, all those things. And at the same time say, I'm stressed, I'm worried, I feel insecure, I don't know what to do next, So I think that for me, the veteran component of who I am and the veterans that I know, I think it's about giving them a space to be able to get the help that they need. And because sometimes they're the only ones that know that they need help.
Yeah. Well, and you're doing the thing that that I feel like makes all the difference, which is you're creating community around it, like giving people the opportunity to connect around it. We've had Brian from Project Rebirth on this podcast, and he has a whole recovery organization that is for veterans and first responders, and recovery meetings and things like that for that group. And I love anybody that's breaking down stigma in any way. And I think that more and more, the thing I love about Phoenix is you walk into a Phoenix event and everybody's coming from all different backgrounds and we all just unconditionally accept each other. And it's amazing. But
That's
also
beautiful.
There are things that as a veteran, you're only going to really you might only feel comfortable sharing with others who have had that lived experience. And maybe that's like the first step to sharing. And then you branch out and have a podcast, tell the whole world, or maybe that's just where you always feel safe. But either way, you're not doing it alone. It doesn't have to be like, all right, I got to go take care of this all by myself because only I got me, because it's my job to take care of everybody else, but instead it's like, address this, be welcomed into a community of other people who've gone through what I have. And the fact that you're doing that and taking those other pieces into account, like, I know you want to feel strong, so here's a way to do this and still feel strong. That's only someone who gets it, who's experienced it, could really build something, I think, like what you have. And that's very cool. And that's really the app, right? The Altum Fitness is kind of that kind of community. Is that right?
Yeah. So that we have the Altum Fitness. You got Altum, stands for deep, do the deep work, right? But yeah, it's free for veterans. So
amazing.
This is the worst tagline ever if you're in marketing, but it's basically free for veterans and cheap for everyone else. That's
clear.
exactly
it's clear. That's all you need.
Yeah. So there's a community that we have, the Altum Fitness community. And it's, there's some habit change courses in there. So if someone wants to do 30 days dry, they can go in there for free and take that. And I mean, the general public can just go in there and take it for free. It's not like some sales funnel where we're moving you towards buying something. You just go in there and take that course. And then there's some other habit change. We have a social media, I don't even know what we call it, social media step back or something. And then there's just a bunch of PDFs and resources for people to not just get more fit, but also get more emotionally fit. But then the app, which is a separate thing, that is, again, free for veterans, but the general public has to pay to get that one just a little bit. But yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. And I feel like I have to say this too, even within the veteran community, because speaking of like projections of people on me, right? So I'm not a combat veteran, right? Even within the veteran community, there's different lived experiences within that community. Yeah. So it's so far from a one size fits all. But my hope is just by being some type of a veteran and just creating content that gets anyone to look inwardly and reflect on these things, that then if they find me, they'll find a guest on the show, or they'll find something else, or they'll find you guys, if just from talking to you, and then they'll find their tribe within the broader tribe of being a veteran. But I think as many of us that can be out there talking about these things, the better for the overall veteran community. But so much respect, especially for combat veterans, man, because that is like the tip of the spear. And as far as trauma goes, it's such a heart for those people. And out of admiration and respect for them, I also do what I do, to try to get people to reach people like that. So
yeah, it's incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It's just so much. I mean, it just speaks right to my heart and what we're we're always saying, on our little team is that, we want to create a scenario where if you find one of us, you find all of us.
Yeah.
Because, none of us can be everything for everybody. No organization, no meeting, no program, no anything, but if you find one of us then you find all of us. The thing that's going to be for you in this moment is going to be there. It's going to be among it, and that might be the thing you need forever. That might be the thing you need in this season. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love some of what you guys do, at least, as far as I know, but you try to organize people locally where they are and meet them where they are to get with other people, right?
Indeed.
Yes,
I love that. I love that. That is hard to do and a worthwhile challenge. So a lot of respect to you guys for what you're trying to do, because there's nothing quite replaces face-to-face, especially in the recovery community.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, it's been really cool as we've grown, because that's always been what we've done is, creating anything we've done has been with the final goal of getting people, face to face and allowing people to start either finding the Phoenix or whatever organization or community they need where they are, or creating it, starting it up, planting that flag, like Scott Stewart always says. But, the more we've ventured into virtual programming and the digital space, the more research we've done and found and been part of to show that meeting people where you are doesn't always even mean geographically and in person. Sometimes that means somebody only ever wants to do stuff through a screen, and oh my gosh, if you don't give them that opportunity, then they're never going to find what they have. So I think 100% what you said, meeting people where they are is so powerful, and to be able to do that with layers is even cooler, because not everybody can get even out of the house, you know what I mean? So to be able to give them that connected experience truly where they are is, I think, one of the beautiful pros of technology, with all the cons, with all the scrolling, numbing that we do, there's just something there that I think, man, I feel really lucky to be alive while we are in this time where that's available.
Agreed. But it looks, I keep looking over here to the right because I have another monitor, and I can see there is a open gym in Colorado Springs, Colorado at 1:45 Mountain Time. So it's starting in 2 minutes. So if I wanted to go in person to a Phoenix event, I could go literally. And that's so friggin' cool. I love it. No, I'm sorry. It's a 30-minute full body workout is what it is. Pretty cool. Yeah.
Who's the instructor on that?
I can click on it. It just says Colorado Springs, but if you want to know,
yeah,
I can let you
we
know.
were just there 2 weeks ago?
Robert Decker.
Okay.
I've heard that name. I feel like, have we met him? I don't remember. I don't think we met him when we were just out there. But
but you're in Colorado Springs.
No, so I'm about 2 hours north of that, so I'm not going to make this class.
But,
I was gonna say, you got 2 minutes to go 2 hours. I'm just saying.
I gotta go.
Yeah, no, that would be a hike. And here's another one in Colorado. It looks like Kendall Crown. I don't know if that's a person.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's Wichita, Phoenix.
Oh,
anyways,
gotcha. Well, shout out to our volunteers that were name dropping on the pod. Hey, VIPs.
yeah. We was just out in Colorado Springs. They made me climb the Manitou Springs incline.
Nobody made you climb that Manitou Springs incline.
They is me and all the voices in my head that didn't think it was that serious until I got halfway up the mountain. Yo, this is serious.
they makes me do a lot we
every day.
For real. All right, Jesse. Before we start to ease up out of here, we got a bit more context as to who you are, where you've been, and where it is that you plan on going. I'm curious from learning that, okay, I got this thing and I want to put this down. I want to change my life. And then deciding, I don't want to do this corporate thing anymore. I want to pursue this and create this. Then diving into that creative process, the same creative process that led you in here on this call with us today. What are some of the things that you've learned about yourself or about life or about the creative process? What are some big gems that really stick out to you when I ask this question about the life or the process that it takes to show up how you have?
That's a great question, man. I didn't expect that. Yeah. So creative process. So I'll start with, I'm hearing two questions there. What have I learned about myself? And then specifically, what have I learned in the creative process? Can I answer both of those? Do we have time for that? Yeah. What have I learned about myself? I alluded to it earlier. anything can become unhealthy, including the creative process, if you're looking at it through the wrong lens, right? So if you're looking at what I've learned is the biggest lesson is if you're trying to create something just so people will click it and watch it and consume it, you're going to inevitably be disingenuous, right? Like you're going to make something that you don't really care about. It doesn't really speak to who you are, and it's not the message that you're uniquely created to create. So if you're out there creating content just for the sake of creating it because you want to grow, if you can do that, good for you, but I don't admire you. If you stay loyal to who you are and your values, for me, that's the only way I can do this. Because trust me, I had people in my ear consulting me, telling me, you got to make this, you got to do this, you got to put this type of caption on it, you have to edit it this way. And every single time I did that, I heard you say earlier, ick, Bryce, you said something about ickness. That word ick, I've learned to use that and be like, fucking ick. Like, I can't do that. I can't be like some, social media influencer. I have to be me or else I'm not going to do this. And I just kind of bought in early on to some people who I thought, and they were well-intended, were advising me how to create content, but they were trying to do something totally different than what I was doing, which is be me, be authentic, tell my story, sink or swim. Doesn't matter how big it gets. I just want to be authentic and reach people. Right. So that was the number one lesson to me, is just be authentic no matter what. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be some huge content creator, but at least you can look in the mirror and be like, I'm being me. And that's that. And I found so far, Lord willing, like it's resonating and the show is growing, but not because I'm laboring and trying to be someone I'm not. So that's like a huge lesson I learned. I also kind of thought, jumping into this space of trying to help people, I thought that every single person or entity in this space was going to be like genuinely well-intended. And unfortunately, I've learned that business is business, and there are just business people out there that are commoditizing hurt. I'll put it that way. And they're just, doing what I just described on the content side and creating funnels to get people to click on their product or service. So I've also learned I was a little naive, thinking I'm running away for-profit private equity healthcare, diving into like, how do I help veterans and with anyone with substance abuse? And there's still bad actors anywhere. So as far as the creative industry, I've learned that I think consumers have to be careful in who they trust their health with, especially their mental health above all things, because it's so precious of what we're trying to help people with. It's legacies, and it couldn't be more important. So that's less on the like, how do I create, but more in like the creative industry side of things. But I've also learned, as far as me and my tendencies, even when I'm jumping into something altruistic and something where like I'm just trying to help people, like I said earlier, I still fall back on some bad habits around just trying to grow things and trying to work too hard and labor on things. So again, I had to let go to grow. That sounds like a cheesy book from the 90s. I literally just said that. I promise I never said that before, but I literally had to let go.
We're printing the hats for after
to
the
let
show.
things start grow. Yeah, make America healthy again. I guess I'll just stop there. But I feel like I've learned so much, and now I would do so much differently even a year out. But I think what I would do better is just relax and be authentic. And then look, creativity, like anything else, you can work on it, but I feel like God kind of blesses people with that. I feel if you make content for long enough, like you'll find out pretty quickly, either you can do it or you need to ask someone else to help you with it. That's probably the last thing I've learned.
Let go to grow, baby. Let go to grow.
There you go. Please.
What's interesting, and I don't either, because some people, maybe I shouldn't even go, but I'm already here now. So
what? Go for it.
What's interesting is you say you're 39, you're about to be 40.
40. Yeah.
And there's another person on this call that is in their 40s, and what I hear about the 40s, and as I make my way towards the 40s, it just feels a lot like what it is that you described. That ease in showing up and knowing that is like prioritizing the ease and the authenticity versus the like, oh, it's got to be like a certain type of way. It's got to work out this way and it's got to go that way. And I'm feeling a lot of it in this season, but those that I admire, they use time in a way that they match the time with the intentionality and learn the lessons along the way. From what I can take and pull from their experiences, that it doesn't get easier, but we do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
I'm glad
Well said,
that being on a friendship and podcast with me has shown you how easeful I am at all times. I hit 40 and it was just like chillax and everything. No, but we've talked about this lots of times that I've definitely felt that in my 40s. Like, oh man, it really does it. It's not that you care less, it's just you care less about the things that you never really needed to care about, and that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with age or a decade, but I do think that's a gift of living sober, like having that sober mindedness is to be able to like recognize what matters, where to put your
You know what scares me though? I'm just kind of riffing here.
Let's bring it down. What scares you?
I don't know if you guys know anyone that fits this, but it seems to me that sometimes when things like later in life, like when people are in their 50s, 60s, especially if they're parents and they become empty nesters and they don't have their kids to focus on or find meaning from, and they just have too much time on their hands when things should be the easiest, like logistically, sometimes people turn back to substances. I don't have any bigger point other than that. Like, but I like to say things like that when I start to feel like, hey, I'm getting to a healthy place. I'm getting to a place where I can let go, as Elsa of Arendelle would say. But it's like, I don't want to be that guy who lets my guard so far down that next thing you know, in my 50s, I'm just, drinking and playing pickleball until I need a knee surgery. I'm being kind of silly now because I feel super
specific experience, Jesse. I just want to tell you, and I also kind of just want to offer that any guest that quotes Elsa probably has a little bit of time before they're an empty nester. Right. So you got a while off, but no, it's interesting. Way back. 2013, 2014, I'm in Detroit. Marijuana is recreationally legalized here. But back then it wasn't. And I think my papa, my grandfather, a father figure of mine, was like just curious about, what I was experiencing, what I was going through. And he would ask me like little questions like, you make this face. It's like, so when they legalize weed, are you going to smoke it? I'm like, no, Pop. Like, I'm not smoking weed because it's illegal. Like, I've identified a framework for living, and I adhere to it, and that's what's given me the results that I've gotten, and these are results unlike I've ever had. So I'm using this framework to show up for life, however life is. So that includes like empty nest or teenager, like what I'm experiencing right now. That includes, all the time on my hands in the world, or like no time in my calendar is stacked. That includes, I'm surrounded by everybody in the world. I'm in a loving relationship. I feel like I'm seen in multiple spaces, and that includes like, it's just me, and I'm navigating solitude a lot, and I'm learning a lot about myself, and I really don't feel like I have any spaces in this moment that I belong. Like, and these are all like the personal experiences that I've experienced in recovery. And I think, and you got me going. And I think this is why I've always tended to. So 12-step is the foundation of my recovery, but I've also been in a lot of other realms. And this is why I've always tended to gravitate towards mentors who have gone through some shit. Because if you have gone through death, loss, losing a business, building a business, teenager, divorce, health scares, and continue to maintain your sobriety and recovery, then just you existing teaches me that that's accessible to me, and that I can come across. There's not a thing that I can come across that I could point at and say, see, this was the last thing. Like this was it. Like I said anything but this, and here goes this. And so now, towel thrown in, and here's this. If I don't want to throw in a towel in that way, because I've defined that that's what my towel is for me. Like that doesn't have to be the case. And that's what I love about the promise that's been delivered about like being able to show up for life on life's terms, because shit still gets stole, things still get broke, people still die, but I can show up for whatever it is that life brings me.
Yeah, well said, man. You know, it made me think about and go back to my first day at Parris Island for basic training for the Marines. Our drill instructors, when they're quote introduced to you, they come running in and they're crazy and they're screaming and they're throwing things and they're loud. It's a really stressful environment. But one of the first things that they said that stuck with me when things got hard through basic training was they said, "We're never going to ask you to do something that we ourselves didn't do." And I remember that I would come back to that like a couple times throughout basic, where I was like, "This is insane that they think we can go this many days without sleeping and do all these crazy things." But then I trusted that no, they did it, and if they can do it, then I can do it. And I think that rings true with what you just said there, Bryce. It's like if you have a mentor that has suffered and had every single reason to turn back to or turn towards substance abuse or addiction, and they're here and they're talking to you and you're healthy, like if they can do it, then you can do it, you know? And I think it's really, really pivotal to have people in your life like that, for sure. Yeah.
The community aspect is so huge. And that's like the foundation that you're building. I mean, on the pot, like look at all the people that you're just like surrounding yourself with who have done this and done it in different ways and continue to. And I don't know, for me, I'm similar. I really relate to what you're saying, that fear of like, okay, well, if I get too comfortable, if I feel too content in this life that I've built, then I am just going to screw it all up. I'm going to like, just forget to, be vigilant. And it's like, no, cause it's not just me, like, cause I've created a life where I have, people around me who, I can count on. And I've also created a foundation of myself who I can count on. It sounds like you're doing that.
Something super discouraging for me is when I started putting content, YouTube in particular, but really anywhere, some of the comments from people that would just like random people would come in and just be so critical of sobriety or the pursuit thereof, and would say things like, I'll never forget one. It was, what the heck was it? Sobriety is for the weak or something like that, some iteration of that. And I thought to myself, okay, wherever you find yourself, you feel above this whole thing, but look out, because it can happen to anybody at any time, whenever you have hurt or wherever you experience trauma or loss or boredom, whatever it is. I saw a statistic. I know we're supposed to wind down here, but what prompted me to say that earlier about like, as we age to be on guard, but I saw a statistic the other day. Can you guess, of all demographics, we'll stick with gender and age, since the pandemic, post-pandemic, what demographic has alcohol abuse increased the most? And it's dramatic and it's not even close. Can you guess?
The age 30 men.
Oh, I was gonna say like mommy wine culture, like women.
Women 40 and older.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So random fact, but it can, I guess the message there is,
I mean,
no one's above it.
We hold space. And first of all, Jesse, get out the comments. The comments is the comment section is, I'm not going to get philosophical, but it's for a creator. The comment section just seems to be like, it could be like a cat video, and you go in the comments and it's like, everybody's stupid and this is dumb. And it's like, yo, the cat was just eating the milk, man. Like, what's going on? And I feel like, but a lot of that too can be, you've mentioned social media multiple times as a thing that we can tend to lean on versus doing the inner work. And so the people who tend to be like the loudest, especially in those realms, it's like, yo, like the emphasis seems to be on the wrong syllable here. The same cat video, like the color yellow is stupid and da-da-da. It's like, sir, this is a Walmart. None of this makes sense. Why are you here? So
that's funny.
I think also with creating content, like any type of, the fact that you took the time to leave a comment on underneath my video lets me know, one, you're watching at least a bit of the video. So maybe if your mind ever changes, you'll have a reference point for where to find the info in the community where your change of mind can be nourished. So I'm glad you're here, and I keep it moving, But I think I just, part of my recovery is like having an inherent belief in people. You cut me off, hey man, I don't know what's going on. Maybe your mom died. Maybe you headed to the hospital. Like, go ahead, you got it. You
I
mad.
just assume they have diarrhea.
See, but that part too, you gotta.
Which is still an innocent thought. You're giving them grace.
I know.
Gross
man,
grace.
Sorry, I hope
gross
you make
grace.
it.
That's a book too. We driving book titles. Gross grace. Just imagine everybody's about to shit their pants.
Oh gosh.
Gross grace and let go to grow.
Let go to grow in your gross grace. Like
Jesse,
a wet noodle.
if you could go to any version of Jesse along the timeline, whether that be in the past, the recent present, or in the future to the Jesse that you haven't even met yet, and tell that Jesse something. Give them a nugget. What iteration of Jesse would you choose, and what would you tell them?
5 years old. I go to 5-year-old Jesse right before my parents got divorced. And I would say this place is safe. People are good. Trust people. You'll be fine. That's what I would say. And that Jesse, he needs somebody to come up to him and say something. But yeah, this is a good place, and you'll be okay. So I'd say more, but you got me a little emotional there, man.
Yeah.
I think about
thinking about little Jesse there too.
Yeah. Yeah. I from like 5 to 19, that Jesse needed somebody, to grab hold of him. But yeah, I'd say people are inherently good. Might be something that I would say, because it took me a long time to trust people. But great question.
Great answer.
Great answer.
Well, with that, we appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah.
We
Yeah. And
appreciate you.
actually, before we wrap, Bryce, I'm sorry to jump in. I just want to make sure we get all the info out there about how they can connect with you and hear more of you. And
What made you think I wasn't going to ask that, Leah?
I don't know why. As soon as I started talking, I was like, I don't know why. And it's been a second since
You
I
just
heard my
wanted
own
to say
voice.
it, but
So
okay.
here we are.
All right, Liz, we'll give it to you.
I'm just still riding that high of like, I pronounced things right today. Like,
There you
let's
go.
do it. Oh my goodness. Anyways.
Yeah. So if you're a veteran, go to ultimatefitness.com, verify your military status, and you can just get into the app for free for life. That's all I care about. Come to the community, use it if you want. But if you know of a veteran and you're listening, send them to ultimatefitness.com. Hopefully Bryce and Liz will just drop that link in there. Again, it's free for veterans. If you're not a veteran, and whether or not you want the app, honestly, I don't really care. I'm not trying to compete with the fitness app. I just care about the veterans getting in there and stuff. And then if you feel like you just want some knowledge around mental health, first and foremost, maybe addiction secondarily, come to soberstrength.com. We're not a guest-driven show. We're a topic-driven show. So what I try to do is bring on people that have a very particular kind of specialty or subject matter that they're experts in, and we unpack that subject. Sure, I ask guests to talk about their life because it's so important and the context really matters. But it's really, I try to almost look at it like each individual episode is a class on a topic. If you see a topic you're not interested, don't listen. If you like it, listen. But either way, I'm really trying to get people into either the community or the app to get the emotional fitness that they need. So that's what we're all about.
Love it.
Emotional fitness. That is so good. I love it.
Right.
I buy that hat too.
All right, y'all. Well, check out Jesse and everything he has going on, and we will catch you all on the next episode of the Rise Recover Live podcast.